So the question that I'd like to ponder in my presentation, and then my colleague Danny Sheehan will complete our discussion before lunch, is why are they here? What are all these craft and intelligent beings doing here? Why have they shown up? And I want to ponder that not in some hypothetical or theoretical way, but simply to summarize what literally tens of thousands of people have reported who, like Richard Dreyfuss in the Encounters of the Third Kind, have actually had direct experience with these non-human intelligences that, for reasons that remain unknown, have been selectively identifying certain humans, bringing them up into the craft, engaging in a certain kind of experimentation, as we humans do when we go into the jungle and find other species. But more fundamentally, engaging in intelligible conversation, as a result of which not only are the people involved transformed, but in their report on what they're taking from that experience, they are saying that the non-human intelligences are here because they have very deep concerns about what humans are doing on our planet at this time. And that's why they've shown up. So for the next few minutes, I would like to describe the context on our planet for why the extraterrestrials are telling us they've shown up in such a dramatic way since 1945. If you look around our world today, there are probably two fundamental megatrends that are shaping the future and are dominating our present moment. One is climate change and the destruction and the destabilization of the planetary ecology. You know this, but there are a couple facts that I think are worth us just pondering by way of understanding why the ETs are showing up. We all think about and talk about global warming. To give an idea of what that actually means, when global warming was beginning to become apparent 30, 40, even up to 20 years ago, what it meant in metaphorical terms is that because of human activity, we were igniting, unleashing heat into the atmosphere that was the equivalent of 2 Hiroshima bombs every second. That's what caused the planet to begin to heat up. Right now, in only 20 years, global warming is the equivalent of 12 Hiroshima bombs every second of heat. Last 16 months have been the consistently hottest months in the last 120,000 years. last year, we broke that threshold that climate scientists have been saying for the last 50 years. Once you break this threshold, you've reached the point of no return. And that is, you've heated up our planet. You know, now 12 Hiroshima bombs a second. You've heated it up so that the average global temperature is 1.5 degrees Celsius over pre-industrial level. And climate scientists are saying you have to stay below it, and if you hit it, the whole thing spins out of control. That's what we did last year, when we consumed more fossil fuel in 2023 than in any year in recorded history. So the temperatures now are going through the roof, literally. And climate scientists now are saying what we all have known was a possibility, but have not dealt with systematically. And that is that there's no more time. We like to think that we have till 2030. And the government say we've got till 2050. But essentially, climate change is now happening at such an accelerated pace that climate scientists are predicting what they're calling extinction events that will begin sometime between 2025 and 2027, where humanity is going to experience a knockdown ecological event that will shake the foundations of civilization. The situation becomes even more concerning when we consider what the governments are doing about it. And that is, our governments are doing essentially no more on the climate change issue than apparently they've been doing on the UFO issue. And in fact, what our governments are preoccupied with, rather than solving the climate crisis and other crises that are confronting the human community, is they're engaging in war. The United States government is at war with Russia in Ukraine. The United States is at war with Israel in the Middle East. The United States is escalating tensions toward war with China in Asia. The defense budgets are escalating year by year. And the reason why this is important, and the reason why the extraterrestrials have been showing up in increasing numbers with increasingly urgent messages for people that they've been communicating with, is we're now escalating toward a nuclear war. Many of you know about the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists that was started back in the late 1940s by Albert Einstein and Bertrand Russell and others, and they've had the famous atomic clock. It's worth mentioning that the atomic clock right now, and has been for the last 24 months, is at 90 seconds to midnight. It has never been that close, even during the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. And I want to just dwell on this because this is of singular importance to humanity, but it is of critical importance for why, in understanding why the extraterrestrials have been showing up. Last month, the Biden administration sent a directive to the Department of Defense called the Nuclear Employment Guidance Directive that ordered the Pentagon to begin preparations for a capacity to launch a nuclear first strike simultaneously against Russia, China, and North Korea. And to begin to deploy what they're calling superfuse warheads on 100 kiloton medium-range missiles deployed by submarines and the advanced missile systems that the United States has deployed in Germany and Poland and Romania. So that on launch, with 100% confidence, they say, they could destroy all the intercontinental ballistic missile systems of Russia, China, and North Korea simultaneously. And then the second wave from the ICBM silos in North Dakota and various places around the United States, they would knock out the cities and command centers and the infrastructure. That's the level of tension at the nuclear level. And if you've been watching Vladimir Putin's comments over the last literally weeks, he is saying this is escalating toward a nuclear exchange, because part of what's also happening within this context of escalating nuclear capacity is that right now the White House is considering whether to enable the Ukrainians to start to launch long-range missiles into Russia, targeted and guided by US, British, and French military, which brings us into the war against Russia in Ukraine. And what the Russians are saying is that if you take that step, essentially the United States, Britain, and France, and NATO are joining Ukraine, and we're going to end up in nuclear war. So what Putin ordered just days ago is that the nuclear forces of Russia now at the tactical level are now being put on hair trigger alert. So, I can see by your eyes that you're taking this in almost in disbelief, but in deep concern, because you know what I'm saying about climate change and the escalating nuclear tensions is actually true. What we need to take in about the extraterrestrials is they have been observing this also. And that's part of the conceptual Copernican revolution of our time. We think we're on our Earth doing whatever we're doing. But the reality is that we have been observed for some time, as Kevin pointed out in his previous remarks, and the extraterrestrials have been showing up periodically over the history of humanity. But of particular importance is the fact that in the aftermath of the Second World War, in fact, specifically around July 16th, 1945, when the United States ignited the first nuclear device at Trinity in New Mexico, the Trinity test in Alamogordo, New Mexico, and then within a couple of weeks it dropped nuclear weapons on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That is what triggered the modern extraterrestrial visitation to Earth. And consistently, for the last nearly 80 years, globally, whether it was in the United States, Russia, China, Japan, Australia, Africa, Latin America, the essential message of those humans who've reported consistent and intelligible communication with the extraterrestrials is they're warning us that they showed up out of concern that we're dramatically misappropriating our power on this planet. That planet Earth, as Kevin pointed out, you can drop it yourself anywhere and you're going to find life. According to what we're being told by these extraterrestrial beings, this planet is of unusual biological diversity. The life forms, as we know, are extraordinarily diverse and sophisticated and complex, and the ecology of this planet is a wonder. And the human species is destroying the stability. The Potsdam Research Institute for Climate Research just 2 days ago said that the human species now have violated 7 out of 9 of the planetary boundaries, as they call it, the latest of which is the acidification of the ocean, which apparently now is unremediable. For a planet 70% ocean to have gone beyond the point of no return on acidification is extraordinary. And so the message is very simple. Humanity needs to fundamentally transform its relations with each other and with the larger planetary ecology. That's the message that's being communicated consistently. So when we're talking about the science is fundamentally important. But when we now broaden the context for why they're here and what they're doing, and take in that they have consistently from the beginning monitored the nuclear weapons facilities, and there are many instances. In 1967 at the Maelstrom Minutemen missile base, where the UFOs descended and 20 of the Minuteman missile silos were shut down, to the complete shock of the U.S. military. And they've done it in Russia. They've done it in China. They've done it to aircraft carriers. So that the part of what's now happening in terms of disclosure is not only an examination of the evidence for the incontrovertible reality that they're here, but an opportunity for humanity to understand that the most momentous event in all of species history is in the process of taking place. And right at that moment, when we literally are teetering on the precipice of self-destruction, the heavens literally opened, and advanced beings, both from different parts of the galaxy, but also different dimensions of space-time, have shown up with a deep concern and a willingness to assist humanity to the degree to which we are open to how we transform our very existence and worldviews and relational priorities such that we can enter this cosmic moment and take our place in the company of beings out there that, because they're far more advanced, have learned a little bit more about what it means to get along with other life forms, which doesn't mean that they're all here with the same agenda, which Steve will be discussing later. But it does mean that the situation on our planet is of such extremis that the cosmos itself is coming to our potential aid. And once we open our minds to that larger context, I think the transformation that we all know is possible for humanity will commence. And that's one reason why I'm involved in this movement at the New Paradigm Institute. We're dedicated at this moment in history to bring the facts about UAP and the capacity to understand the larger contextual framework leading to intelligible communication with these beings at multiple levels